I'm Justine Swan and I'm here at Newhaven's West Beach, known to the locals as Newhaven Sandy Beach. Unfortunately, the beach has been closed off to the public since 2008. Why? Well, here to tell me that is Cllr Pinky. Hello, Cllr Pinky. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure.
I just want you to be able to explain to our viewers what is going on with this beach. Why can we not get on this beach?
So, well, to talk to you about the beach, I have to kind of go a little bit into the history, because obviously, as you just said, it closed in 2008, which was very, very sad. Initially, I think everyone thought it was to do with the repair of the steps, because it was quite slippery down there. Because it's a tidal beach, and when the tide comes in, you get all the green slime and stuff, and it can be a bit dangerous. But I don't think anyone really understood the ramifications of what was going to happen when, the beach did eventually close. The port itself has gone through a few owners since, the 1980s, when it was kind of sold to a guy who didn't do anything much with it, and then nobody kind of wanted to take it on, because of course we have the ferry here as well, which is a really important service. And then it was decided that the French board at Rouen, which is the Seine-de-Maritime board, would take over, and the French taxpayer would then pay for the ferry service from then on in. When they took over the port, they then registered themselves as a British company, and they've got British staff, etc. over here as well. And it was just decided to shut the beach, I think, because people were starting to complain about it being a bit slippery and etc. So then we've got to 2008 when it's shut. I don't think people realised the ramifications of what that was, because for years and years people have used this beach without even questioning who owned it, because it never came up. So I think people always thought of it as our beach. I mean, yeah, it's called the Sandy Beach locally, but people think of it as ours. It's our beach. So when people took it away, all of a sudden it became this huge deal. Why can't I go down there, etc., etc. And it was moaned about and groaned about for years. Nobody really did anything much about it. And then, of course, in 2007, a little man over in America somewhere called Mark Zuckerberg created a huge social media platform that everyone decided they can air their opinions on, and that is when people started coming together. Community groups were formed, and people started saying, like, yeah, why aren't we allowed down the beach? Somebody needs to do something. But of course, what most people, well-meaning people, mean by that is somebody else needs to do something about it. And that's where I kind of came on, because I'm a bit of a money where my mouth is, although it gets me into trouble sometimes.
You do like a challenge.
I do. Just ask my husband, creature. But I'm one of those people that I don't like to sit around talking about something. It's like, well, that's fine, we can do that, we can do this.
Yeah.
Why don't we have a picnic, which is what it started off at. It was like, we can meet on the top here, we can take sandwiches down there, we can just create a bit of a furore, let them know that we exist. Protest is one of the fundamental rights that we've all been raised to know is something that that we can do. We won't get into the recent politics of things being taken away like that, but that's another conversation entirely. But I turned up on the day, like you said, it was 14 years ago now.
14 years.
14 years ago.
A whole generation of kids now have
never
been on that
My
beach.
daughter is 15 years old, and she has never put a toe on that beach in a legal way.
No.
If that makes sense.
I think a lot of us have been over there.
I definitely, absolutely. But on the day this little picnic was sorted out, about 400 people turned up, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, all right, we're doing this then. And I'm not one to back down from a challenge, and I stood on that rock over here, which is like a bunch of, it looks like concrete blocks. I stood on them and spoke to the people that were here, and the next thing I knew, people were turning up, allegedly, with mattresses and ladders, and we managed to get those 400 people onto the beach.
I do remember that. I absolutely do remember that. It was fantastic. South East News were here, weren't they?
They were, yeah.
Yeah.
The Daily Mail was here and everything.
Yeah.
Steady.
So if we can talk about the politics around this. So I understand that NPP, Newhaven Port Properties, own this beach.
They do.
And because of the health and safety, they've closed it.
It was initially thought that was the case. That was an assumation, though.
Right.
It was an assumption, because people tend to forget that they don't just own this beach here. they own all of them.
Yeah.
They own this one over here, which is the Stony Beach, the West Stony Beach. They own this one, and they own all of the beaches across the river up to the Seaford Yacht Club. All of them, all across the whole
So
bay.
all the Seaford Bay.
All of them.
Okay.
It's all included in the property blueprints, if you like. So the council, to be fair to them, had already done a smaller protest than mine, where they'd walked down here and they'd done a bit of a protest, but then nothing had really come of it. So they were always trying to talk to the port, and then it kind of started getting a bit legal, and that's when things started to kick off, because then they realised that they did actually have people behind them that were going to stand there and say, no, we want the beach back, that's what we want. And we had to go through quite a lot of legal process.
So the legal processes that you've gone through, and with the town council's backing, has been about getting the locals to be able to access this area as a village green, because if they could prove that that they have been using the area for a certain length of time, then they can actually have that as we come in here, we're going to have a picnic, and we're allowed to, as a village green status.
Yeah.
And I believe that we were granted that at one time.
Initially, yeah, we went through a few preliminary hearings. It was East Sussex County Council themselves that took it all to court on our behalf, if that makes sense.
Yes. And the appeal came back from the MPP, and then they took that back from.
That's right. So village green status was initially granted. They saw no reason why it couldn't be. There are precedents set in the law for tidal village greens. There's one in Worthing, I believe, and that's where the precedent was set, because this beach is tidal. About 8 hours of every day, it's fully covered by water. The other 8 hours, as you can see from behind us, this is beautiful, golden, sandy, flat beach that it's so sad to look at it. Honestly, it makes everyone sad to just kind of see that.
Well, it does, because as you were saying to me earlier when we were chatting about Newhaven, when you ask the locals, what do you want in Newhaven? One of the very first things they will say is, we want our beach back. And as you said, our beach. And what they're not recognising is the fact that it's owned by somebody else.
Somebody else. It's essentially
so it's a business.
Yeah. Basically, this happens every few weeks, I think, on one of the social media community pages. Somebody who probably hasn't read what's happened before has maybe come into town after years, and they're like, why can't we go on the beach?
Yeah.
And then of course everyone jumps in and then it's like, the council needs to do something about it. The council are doing nothing about it. But the council can't do anything about it. We don't own it.
Yeah.
It would be a bit like turning up to somebody's private house and saying, hi, we've got some pink paint, we're going to paint your house. And you'd be like, well, I would, but it's like, no, you're not doing that, because that's my house, and I'm going to be quite upset if you do that, because that's my property. But we paid for the paint, you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
It's the same
I was
sort
going
of
to say
premise.
exactly that. There's some people, local businesses, that have said we'll come and repair anything, and if that's the cause and that's the reason, and that isn't the issue. That isn't the only issue.
This is where it starts getting really frustrating.
It's messy, isn't it?
This is where it starts getting frustrating, because as a business, we want to support MPP and the Port Authority, because they have essentially kept the ferry going for all these years.
Yeah.
The French taxpayer pays for that, and people don't really realise that. It's always like, the French, and it's not. It really isn't. They've kind of saved our ferry service. Without them, it wouldn't exist. But this is where it starts getting kind of messy, because although people assumed that it was about health and safety at first, it kind of has turned out that they could pay for the repairs if they wanted to. They've said to us a few times, well, we could, but we just don't want to. We don't want to. And how do you fight against something like that? You can't. And it's so frustrating when people are like, you should try this, you should try this, you should... We have tried. We've tried talking to them, and there's always like the urban legends of, I heard my mate from the taxis whose sister-in-law said that this happened, and I heard that it was offered to the council, and they for £1, and they turned it down.
So you get this Chinese whispers effect.
Yeah, absolutely. But stories like that have always got an element of truth to them.
Yeah.
There was a moment before it went to the High Court, before the appeal went in from us, they said to us, well, okay then, if the local town council can take it over and pay for any liability insurance and be responsible for the beach, pay for its upkeep, all that kind of stuff, okay, we'll talk about it. They didn't promise it to us, but they said, well, that's a possibility. But unfortunately, the law says, the UK law says, there's nothing to do with EU law either, because that's the other thing people jump on.
And that's a whole new
nothing to do with the EU law. It's a British British law for businesses, etc., says that the owners are liable. Doesn't matter who leases it from them, and they wouldn't sell it because it's a part of the port. I mean, that arm is from 1860. They're not going to give that up lightly, are they?
No.
So that's where it started getting kind of messy, because then we had to take it to court. We had no choice, because we had to try and do the legal thing. We had to. The only way they were ever going to back down is if a judge said, no, you've got to do it. But sadly, that's not what happened. The Supreme Judge ruled in a very wishy-washy way that it was their property. We didn't have a right to go down here because it was all about the right to bathe, you see.
Oh, okay, that's new.
Which is a very ancient
Hadn't heard of that
Magna Carta-y thing.
Right.
The right to bathe.
So in terms of owning a business, in terms of owning property in this country, you do have a legal requirement to maintain property. So I wonder how we feel about them not maintaining it, and where we go with that, because it's not just getting onto the beach. This whole area could probably do with some input financially to maintain it, and they're not stepping forward to do that, are they, MPP?
Well, they have repaired actually quite a lot of the arm, and it's always going to be an ongoing thing. But of course, repairing it to a standard where it can be used by a port, and repairing it to a standard where it can be used by bathers, two completely different levels of repair, if that makes sense. All the while there's no liability for people that are down there. There's no risk.
Hence why it's barricaded off, nothing can go wrong.
Which is why they barricaded it off, because they don't want the risk.
No.
It does come under civil law if people do manage to go down there, and they do. It's a civil law, which means that you can go down there, but as soon as somebody from the port says you have to leave, if you don't leave, it becomes criminal.
Right. Yes. So you could access it via your kayak, for example.
Yes, but if you get asked to leave, you have to
go. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So moving forward, what do you foresee happening here? Do you foresee this just forever being barricaded off?
I hope not.
Let's hope not.
Let's
hope not.
Because there's lots of money being, you just spoke about the repairs and things going on down here. There's actually quite a lot of investment going on down in this little bit behind us. Lewis District Council are doing up the amenities. There's going to be a fish restaurant down here. So once people start coming here, I'm hoping that they'll start seeing it for the moneymaker it could be.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great venue. It really should be more.
Absolutely.
And what about the parking? Because we're paying to park to come here, and who's taking that revenue? Is that NPP?
That would be the people that run the amenities down there. It all goes back into what they run down here.
Oh, okay. So that's not necessarily NPP.
No, that's not necessarily them. No, it was for a while, but they've leased the land behind us.
I see.
To a guy that I went to school with, actually, he'd love to get the beach open. He's tried desperately, because obviously everybody wants that kudos. Our MP has tried. A few of our councillors have tried. We've all had meetings. We've all had email threads, begging.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. It's sad, because it's a community that would support them more if that was a concession, if that was made. I don't think anyone would mind if it was even seasonal.
No. It'd be something.
May to December or something, you know what I mean? Like having it shut for like December to May, and then maybe opening it for the summer. Because it's a safe beach for the doggies. It's lovely and flat. You put your toddler down there, it's all walled down there, there's no steps. You go onto a stony beach, and one minute you're looking at tiny 2-year-old Tarquin, and the next minute they're head under.
Yeah, because you've got the shelves.
Because you've got the shelves as it goes down. So
yeah. Well, I grew up on that beach.
Yeah, I did too. My sister and I used to go down with a bottle of water and some jam sandwiches after school. We'd come down there and we'd just stay down there all day.
All day long.
All day long.
Fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it was rammed.
It was, yeah, it was. The last few years before it shut, it was a bit quieter. And I don't think people realise, because it's always been here. And it's one of those things, if you don't use it, you lose it. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
So, and we had to prove that we'd used it as well during
But you've only got to look at the photographs.
Yep.
The historical photographs. I mean, this place, even in the 50s, 60s, cars rammed it, didn't they, all the way down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I honestly think that the board at Rouen are so far away. I think they're genuinely confused why we're up in arms about it. Honestly, I've got the impression that they're genuinely confused as to why we're making a big fuss about it. It's like, but we've come over here, we've saved their ferry service. They've got all these other beaches. What? You
So
know, they don't
presumably it's their
understand.
taxpayers that are paying for this part of our world. If you
Yeah,
like.
it is basically. Yeah, it used to be railway land,
Yeah.
which was obviously, you know, privatised in the 80s, and then it all went from there. Really, it all went downhill from there. So if you wanted to blame someone specific, it would be, you know, that person that was in charge in the 80s.
Whoever that was. Yeah.
Whoever that was,
We
I
won't
can't
mention
remember.
names, no. So we've heard two sides, and there is always two sides
Of course there is.
to every story.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come
Yeah,
and
no
speak
problem.
to us about that, and to really sort of tell everybody what's going on here.
Yeah, I wish that we could just kind of open it up and it would be done.
Yeah.
Like I said, everyone would love the kudos to do that. I wouldn't care who does it
No.
either.
No.
Nobody would.
No. Just get it open.
But it would be fantastic to have that open again, even if it was just seasonally.
Yeah.
But
And we take that.
Absolutely. I'd take it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pinky.
No
It's been
problem at all.
lovely talking to you.
Lovely. Thank you.